This week on Quadriga, getting women to the top. Europe takes action. EU Justice Minister Viviane Reding has published draft legislation that would force companies to implement binding gender quotas for their supervisory boards by 2020. The proposed legislation requires 40% of such board members to be female. But the regulation will only affect businesses listed on stock exchanges. Small and medium-sized companies will initially escape scrutiny. Companies where women are underrepresented on their boards could face sanctions, such as fines and having subsidies cut. The Justice Commission says gender quotas are good business sense and help improve corporate governance. But critics say voluntary codes are better and that government should not interfere in the issue. Your host this week, Ali Aslan.
Hello and welcome to Quadriga. Half of Europe's population is female, but you wouldn't necessarily know by looking at the top executives in the business world. So the question is, do we need mandatory quotas in Europe or not? To discuss this, I am joined by three certainly very qualified women, and I think what must be a first in Quadriga, joined by an all-female cast. Christiane Meyer is a correspondent for the German public broadcaster ARD, and she's very much in favor of a quota. Hildegard Stausberg is a correspondent and columnist for the German weekly Die Welt, and she's been known to oppose the quota for a very long time. And Jonna van Kalker is a Dutch economist who is somewhat ambivalent about whether we need the quota in Europe or not. Thank you all for being here. Christiane Meyer, Justice Commissioner Viviane Reding, as we just heard, she proposed a new form of legislation. 40% of the supervisory board members should be women by the year 2020 in Europe. I take it that you embrace this initiative.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's about time somebody takes this initiative, because what we see in reality is asking for that. And I think the quota, to cut it really short, is a measure of self-defense by women.
And so you're very much in favor of the notion put forth by Ms. Reding. Do you think, though, that a mandatory quota per se needs to be imposed here?
Well, it has been tried before, also in Germany, for the last 10 years to make it not mandatory, but voluntary, and it hasn't worked. So we see numbers that are really shocking. We see numbers in the board of directors in big companies that are really, really low. They're about, I think, in the average at 18% is the latest number we got, and that is definitely not enough. And I can see it in my field, the media, it's even worse. It is really shocking, and I think, well, if the men can't do it, you know, they have to be helped.
And we will certainly talk more about the media landscape as well in Germany, because you are one of the signatories of a campaign that has very much been discussed here in Germany. Hildegard Stausberg, the quota by Viviane Reding, by Commissioner Reding, certainly is not to your liking. What exactly is it that you oppose about the female quota?
I think quotas are never a solution. Quality is the solution, and I work since 1972. I have never felt any discrimination being a woman, and from my own point of view, from my own experiences, I cannot at all be for quotas. And I think the German economy does well, and for me it is without any importance whether the chief, for example, of Mercedes-Benz is a man or a woman. I want Mercedes-Benz to be a good firm, and I think that is for me the leading idea and not a quota.
But as we said, half of Europe's population is female. Don't you think that gender diversity must also be somehow reflected in the workplace?
Well, I think it is reflected, but not necessarily in numbers. You can have a very important post and be in the second or third position. And I wonder whether really if you impose these quota, you will get what you want, because what we need in Europe is quality. We are in a very strong competition with Asia, and I wonder whether very many people who are now in favor of this quota thing understand that if we really impose this, we will be successful in the international standards.
And Jonna van Kalker, you are not from Germany, you are from the Netherlands, a country that has sort of embraced the quota. What has been the experience?
Well, in the Netherlands, we only have a voluntary quota, and this has not had the desired effect. So I agree that voluntary quotas don't work, and I can see why they are now trying to go to this length to force those and to sanction these quotas. But I'm not sure if this is the right way to go, because personally, I believe that discrimination is not the reason why most women don't make it at the top.
And we will talk certainly about what other reasons could possibly be behind it. There's a discussion, Christiane Meyer, whether politics should really interfere in this, whether it's politics' place to tell businesses how to run their business, how to do their work. What would you say?
I would say yes, it is politics. Politics is not an abstract something. It's not a ghost. It's elected politicians who actually do their job for us. So, of course, politics can interfere and should interfere, I think. And actually, there are examples where it worked. Take Norway, for example. They introduced the quota a couple of years ago, 40%. It worked. Norway is on top economically. Women did not ruin the country because the quota of 40% was introduced. It works, you know, what else can I say? So I think it would work here, and I think politics should definitely start doing something. And many people in politics do want to do something.
Well, and since you mentioned Norway, indeed, there have been countries who have imposed the quota. In the case of Netherlands, we've heard it's rather voluntary. But in the case of Norway, indeed, there we have seen some developments. And let's see what experience Norway has had with the quota.
Norway plays a leading role when it comes to gender legislation. In 2003, it set a quota of 40% for both men and women on company boards. Initially, targets were voluntary and change was slow. Then, in 2006, quotas became mandatory and rapid change followed. Employers' associations, who initially feared women would be advanced at the expense of qualified male colleagues, have been won over. Investors have not fled the country, and the stock market did not crash. Norway has shown that women's careers and family are compatible. Almost half of Norwegian employees can work from home, at least part-time, to look after their children. Although not an EU member, Norway is showing the path the bloc's member states may be taking.
Well, Hildegard Stausberg, we just saw the experience of and by Norway. Certainly the country has not gone down in shambles. Why don't you think such a model would work and be applicable for all of Europe?
Funny enough, I know Norway because my nephew is working at Bergen, and his wife is working there too. She has a private little thing and makes a violinist, with 3 children. What works in Norway can work in Norway. I have nothing against Norway making whatever he wants to. But I do not believe in quota for my own experience and for my own country. And Norway is a small country. They have their oil. It's a rich country. I would say it's a very special case. And if I really feel that this quota should just be imposed, I just think it's the wrong way. Women are on a good path. They get better formation, economic formation, business formation than ever before, and they will make their way to the top, and they don't need the quota.
So you're saying what happens in Norway doesn't necessarily have to work somewhere else. Is that my understanding?
Okay, I would say in Germany. I wouldn't impose it to any other country. This is my country, and I just think for my country that way. And no, I absolutely I'm against that.
And we will, of course, look at in more detail about the case of Germany, the most populous country in Europe. Now, some would say, Christiane Meyer, that why not give the voluntary approach a chance? I mean, we've seen in Britain that the voluntary targets that Britain has set for itself, Britain is meeting them and even ahead of schedule. So,
yeah, but they're very low. I mean, they don't talk about 40%. It's very, very low. It's ridiculously low. And I think I don't have to love the quota. I don't think it's the perfect instrument, and I don't think it's even an instrument would be the instrument of choice, but I don't know anything better. And from experience, you were quoting your experience. I have the same experience. I was not disadvantaged because I was a woman, but I know I'm an exception. There are so many other women who have much bigger problems, especially in the private sector. So I think you have to do it. We have to do it. We don't have another option. And the voluntary approach, as you mentioned it, hasn't worked. Not in Germany, not in this country. Maybe it's elsewhere. But here it is not enough. And it would take probably another 100 years, if you follow that path.
And there are some people who are saying that, in fact, the proposal by Justice Commissioner Reding is not going far enough, because it is saying that 2020 for one is way too late. And it's also saying it exempts for, small and medium-sized businesses. So would you say that the proposal set forth is...
Yeah, that can be debated. There are different approaches to that. Many women think that once you have the quota in the board of directors, it will sort of trickle through and women will help other women, or it will actually change the atmosphere in the workplace and encourage women to come forward. So that is, as I say, it can be debated. I'm not necessarily of the same opinion. I think the quota should be right through all the hierarchy levels, because otherwise it's not going to work and there are not going to be enough women to fill the positions.
And Jona van Kalker, the proposal set forth by Commissioner Reding, if it were to become law, though it seems increasingly doubtful at this moment, if it were to become law, it would impose fines on the companies that would not meet the 40% standard. And they might even lose state subsidies. Do you think that's the right approach?
Well, I think if you want to have a quota, then you need to sanction it as well, because otherwise it's just like saying, please do this, and no one's going to listen to that.
In the case of in the Netherlands, it's voluntary.
It's voluntary and it's not working. We set a target of 30% and we're not nearly there. So if you want this to work, it needs to be sanctioned.
So you're saying it's inevitable to have the threat of sanctions loom over the companies if they are going to take this issue seriously?
Yes, if you want a quota.
Christiane Meyer, you've been a signatory and, in fact, one of the driving forces behind the pro-quote campaign, which demands that 30% of all executive positions in the German media should be filled by women. Are you really an exception? Is Hildegard Stausbeck an exception? Are you an exception, looking at the...
I can give you numbers if you want. 350 editors-in-chief in Germany for papers and weeklies, 2% are women. And my own company, ARD, German Television, Channel 1, we have, it's a federal organization, so we have 12 CEOs for the various broadcasting stations. 3 of them are women.
But the most important is woman.
Yes.
WDR.
Yes.
Okay.
That is true.
The others are tiny, some of them are totally unimportant. So the really most important WDR has a woman CEO.
For the first time, and I'm
Since
very
already
happy
3 or 4 years.
This is the case. On the other hand, 12 editors-in-chief who are very important on the operational level when it comes to journalism. How many do we have women? Not a single one. 12 men who decide who is going to rise or not rise, in their various broadcasting stations. I think that is not enough. That is really
The fact that a
sad.
newspaper is run by a man doesn't make the newspaper bad or worse than if it would be run by a woman. I think this is really ideology. The real thing is to speak about quality. Is the newspaper good? Is whatever firm good? Does it work? Is there a relation between tax paying and revenue and all this? And if this is okay, for me it's absolutely irrelevant if this is a man or a woman who is in charge. I want the thing being really in a good shape.
I totally agree with you that quality is the issue, of course. But if you turn this argument around, you would say that in the whole ARD with that 12 editors-in-chief, there's not a single woman who could match the quality of the men, and that is not true. There are many women who are very qualified, but they don't have the chance to get to these positions. And so I think, yes, you're right, quality must decide, of course. But that is not the issue, because the actual decision is not taken by the standard of quality. It has many other reasons why women don't rise and why they hit the so-called